Hello and welcome to part 2 of our Scorpion Turbo build. We've got a fair way. The fuel system's done, manifolds pretty much all done. It's not bolted right up yet, but manifolds all done. The exhaust manifold is away getting HPC coated. Sorry, can't show you that at present. But what we have been concentrating on is the cooling system. That's the original Sigma radiator. And that's our new radiator. That's actually Holden Rodeo Turbo Diesel. And whilst they look similar, I've done the maths on it, and it's actually 22% bigger in core size. But where the real advantage is the Sigma radiator is 30mm 2 core. The new radiator is 50mm 3 core. So that's where most of our advantage will come. Besides the extra width and height, the 3 cores should really keep it cool. Now the thing with radiators is they're useless unless you have airflow. So we've addressed that as well. Make sure that we get really good airflow. So that's the fan off the Scorpion, or Sigma for that matter. And I've done a few of these over the years. I've done a few for Mustangs and that sort of thing, and use the original clutched hub because the bolt pattern is actually the same as a Ford and the dowel hole is the same as a Ford. So that clutched hub fits straight onto a Ford water pump. But then you want a decent sized fan to go with it. So what I use is that. And that's Nissan Patrol. So it doesn't bolt on, unfortunately, so I've got to make an adapter to adapt it on there, but that's not a real big deal, and I'll show you the adapter. Alright, so that's my adapter plate there. It's a piece of 6mm aluminium, nice and sturdy, so the fan doesn't try and crack it or anything like that. And our big fan will just bolt straight to that. So that should well and truly keep it cool. Now, whilst we've got a big fan and we've got a big radiator, you really do need to put a shroud around it to make it really effective so that the air doesn't get pulled in around the sides, the hot air from under the bonnet, but it actually pulls the air straight through the radiator. So to that end, we made a nice big shroud. So that will go on there as well. And that'll sit there roughly like that. Anyway, I'll show you that in a minute when we put the radiator in and dummy fit this up. I was a little bit concerned about the manifold and how tall it was, because when we test fitted the bonnet, boy, this throttle body came awfully close to the bonnet. So what I did, took it off, cut 30mm out of the height because there was a nice little straight section there. And that's dropped the height of the manifold for us by 30mm. Now we've got a ton of clearance on the bonnet without a worry. So a few weeks have passed since the last part of the video, and in that I was talking about the water system. I've had a little change of mind of where the thermostat housing is going to go, and instead of trying to run the hose out and around and under the distributor and trying to get it up here, if we could just take a straight shot across there, it's just one straight hose. So I was going to use this bit of thermostat housing that I cut off the back of the manifold. Decided not to use it, it's a bit rough, and so I made this up. Still got to grind this off to get the correct angle, but that will get welded on there. That will go into there, and then it'll just point straight at the radiator. However, this created another problem, and that is this wiring on the distributor. This is a magnet distributor, and the plug comes straight up. So that gave me another dilemma. So what I did, that's the lug that was cast onto this distributor originally. So I cut the lug off, made my own mounting plate for it. So now that pops on there, and I can put the wiring facing downwards. So with the wiring down, that can now come straight across there without fouling anything. I'm using the original Sigma turbo manifold, but the flange for it is a T4 flange. And of course the new turbo is T25 flange. So I made this adapter plate up. I know you can buy them, but this one had to be a little bit special. So it's about 20 millimeters thick. I had to bevel the front edge off so we can get the oil return pipe to come off the turbo. So a bit of fiddly stuff there to actually adapt a late model turbo to one of these early model manifolds. So this is how the turbo looks now that it's on. We have to swivel the casings around and so forth to try and get all of the hoses. So we've got our oil supply hose here. That's our water hose, will go into the back of a manifold. We've got another water hose here, which is on the suction side, goes into the water pump. And then you can't see it, but from underneath there is the oil return, which is a big -10 fitting, which will take the oil back down into the sump. So our inlet side will come out of our air box here, which is cold air induction. And then I'll have to trim these hoses up, but we'll have our big 3-inch hoses there going in. On the exhaust side, I just bought one of these just off eBay. It's a V-band, so that'll go on the back. And the good thing about the V-band is that it actually gives us a little bit of wriggle room. So when the downpipe goes down, we can set it into whatever position we want. Radiator's in, got the shroud on, the big fans in there, and man, this really pulls air like crazy. This has worked out very, very well indeed. Did a little bit different here on the top radiator hose. I was going to have that going in a straight line, and somebody in the comments actually said it's better to put a curved hose on it to allow for a little bit of movement. And that's a good point. And just by dumb luck, really, that is the original top radiator hose off the Sigma, cut down a little bit, but it gives us that nice little S-bend, which gives us that freedom of movement. We've put central locking and electric windows in this car. The central locking works like a charm. But because of the extra linkages, because you don't have a button in the door here, you've actually got this little rotator over here. There's a little bit of extra friction. So you've seen me do this before, this is not new. So what I've done is I ganged 2 of those motors together so that it absolutely does work. So central locking works like a charm. I wish I could say the same about the electric windows. Unfortunately, this is pretty much all you can buy. You can buy really expensive ones, but I imagine that's not going to solve the problem. So these are the generic aftermarket window conversion. There's 2 different styles. There's these ones here with these 2 separate cables that run around. There's also one with one single black one that runs down the center. They're even worse than these ones. I've tried them and they are definitely less powerful. You can see they've only got tiny little motors on them. These are not really powerful. But the problem is not just the motors. The biggest problem is voltage drop. And I can demonstrate this to you. First of all, I'll show you how much trouble this has putting the windows up. So that's going up now, and you can see that is just struggling to get that window up. So we're nearly there, nearly there. Okay, down, not so much a problem, but you've got the weight of the window helping you. But where the problem is in voltage drop, and I'll show you that now. We're kind of fortunate here in that our boost gauge is also a volts gauge. So you turn the key on, we've got 12.2 volts in there. Now watch what happens when we start putting the window up. That's measuring the voltage at the window. We're down to basically 10 volts. That's the problem. Problem is massive voltage drop. Now I'll show you the passenger side window. Down, not a problem. Up, a little bit slower. but still not a problem. Goes up and down quite well. The reason for that is that we've run a heavy wire, a good heavy gauge wire, right inside the door. And then I've put 2 relays in the door. So now the switches on the console here don't carry the current to drive the motor. All they're doing is supplying the signal for up or down. And that's what we're going to do in the driver's door as well. So we're going to continue that heavy wire over here, put it inside the door, put the 2 relays in the door to get the extra power. Now, what does help is having the engine running, because you make a few more volts. But that's not always convenient, and you don't want to have to muck around with, oh, I want the window up, I have to start the engine. So I'll put the relays in there and I'll be able to show you how that works, but that definitely fixes the problem. So that's ignition on, 12.3 volts, and that's the window going up on the passenger side. It drops 0.1 of a volt, that's all it drops. So that's the difference between having a good heavy wire in there and the tiny thin wiring that runs to these windows as supplied by the manufacturer. That's it for this part of the build. The next part will be the car actually running and driving. So once again, thanks for tuning in.